with respect to gaining foreign investment and return of tourists. If there's heat on the border, there's heat with Israel, neither one of those things would ever come to the fulfillment to the degree that they would if there was calm there and an understanding that the treaty is sound and safe. Now, the question of worldwide or regional links. On the world basis, really not much change. Not much change yet. It could happen. There is increasing frustration with Israeli activities with respect to the territories, the settlements, and so forth, and the separation barrier. I mentioned the political impact of that. And that is probably more pronounced in Europe than elsewhere in the world. Now, but the most important regional impact has been with Turkey. Now, the impact of Arab Spring on that relationship is most pronounced, or mostly the result of the fact that Turkey is itself searching a new role in the Arab world, the Islamic world, and in the region. So Turkey has adjusted its own policies with respect to its neighbors and with the broader region. On the other hand, Israeli actions have also irritated the Turks. Now, we all know about the Gaza flotilla, the question of an apology or not, but also there have been cases of clear, egregious disrespect of Israeli officials for Turkish officials, including one famous case that happened at the Israeli Foreign Ministry, where the deputy foreign minister basically stuck his eye in the Turkish, I think it was the Chargé, it wasn't the Turkish ambassador, but the Chargé. And this has been well reported in the Israeli press. People said, what is going on here? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? Anyway. Okay. Now the fourth leg, local deterrence. And here let's talk about Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. Syria, the situation is really very, very serious. And Kate has written this thesis about Syria because of her previous background there that you'll find on the MEI's website. But it's really very, very serious, and the outcome is not known. People are saying now more and more that Assad's tenure there is simply a matter of time. Don't know what's going to happen between the time now and when he goes and what's going to happen after he goes. A lot of unknowns there, but a lot of really difficult questions. He's, of course, trying to turn it into a kind of existential struggle for the Alawites and for the Christians who will stand with him until death, thus probably ratcheting up the violence. We saw the violence yesterday in Israel. Also, the interests of Hezbollah are directly at stake, because if the Sunnis assume basically preponderance of authority in Syria, what does that mean for the Sunnis in Lebanon, and then what does that mean for Hezbollah? And also, of course, Iran, the Iranian connection. We saw what Nasrallah said Tuesday, I guess it was. But this is one possible good thing, and that is if the nexus between Tehran and Damascus can be broken, it would certainly change the dynamic there. But there's also a possibility that in order to rally support as a defender of Syria and Arab interests, to try to involve Israel in some way. So you could have even a sub-regional kind of conflict of some sort. And then there's the Turkish role, talking about safe havens and so forth. What does that mean with respect to the possible escalation of violence? So a lot of really unknowns there, but not a good situation. Lebanon, the Lebanese are basically keeping their heads down, knowing that any way that they get involved would probably not work to their advantage in the near term, and maybe in the long term, depending on how things sort out. Now, Palestine, of course, the rise of the Brotherhood has been a clear gain for Hamas, and conversely, the fall of Mubarak has been a clear loss for Israel. But the results of the last couple of years of the administration's mistakes in trying to push forward on the peace process has had the result that the Palestinians have no longer any confidence or faith that the U.S. is going to be able to achieve any movement, and therefore I have 1 minute to go. So that is the origin of the UN gambit, and also the desire to try to find reconciliation path between Fatah and Hamas. But the goal of Hamas in the Palestinian leadership is going to be a real serious obstacle, because you all know what the American policy is, what the European policy is with respect to Hamas. So Abbas is focusing on economic, institutional building, infrastructure building, but it's also clear that he's not prepared to make concessions in advance of any negotiations, particularly on the new demand of Netanyahu's government, and that is to accept Israel as a Jewish state. Well, why not? Because if they do that in advance, that's a concession. That means giving up the whole refugee issue, even before negotiations start. And so that, for them, is a clear red line. Now, Israeli policies with respect to the Palestinians, a little bit of uncertainty here, a little bit back and forth, example, on the tax revenue issue, but no real change, except really an escalation, increase in settlement building in the West Bank, and particularly around East Jerusalem, which has an incredible, dangerous result of making a two-state solution impossible. Okay, now what might Israel do? A few things. Israel might understand the unsustainability of the present policies regarding territories. Israel might come to grips with the compromises needed to reach a two-state solution, which is probably in Israel's long-term interest. They might accept their responsibilities to work with the United States in order to preclude Iranian nuclear capability. They might actually reach out to their neighbors, particularly Egypt, and see what can be done there. And they also might try to create a better dynamic that would lead in the near medium term to negotiations with the Palestinians. Okay, now have you heard any of that before? That's what Leon Panetta said last Friday night at the Savant Center in Brookings. So that is U.S. policy, at least it's the U.S. Department of Defense policy. And in talking to my friends at State After, they think that was pretty good speech too. Anyway, the strategic situation has changed, but maybe not as much as apparent, in my opinion. But in any event, during an American presidential year, there is not going to be any serious American initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Art. Molly Williamson examined the impact of the Arab Spring on regional energy security, an area to which she brings years of experience. She, too, is a former Foreign Service officer who has served 6 presidents, retiring with the rank of career minister. Among her many positions, Molly served as senior foreign policy advisor to the Secretary of Energy, as the Chargé d'Affaires in Bahrain, as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Commerce for the Middle East, South Asia, Oceania, and Africa, and as Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for International Organizations.
Thank you, and my thanks to NEI for doing this. It's hard to overstate the criticality of the stage we're in with respect to these developments and this very important region of the world. Let me just start with some context. The facts are these. The planet currently consumes more than 88 million barrels of oil every day. It's an unprecedented level of consumption. Our peak before the global recession in 2008 was 86 million barrels a day. There are some parts of the world that don't believe we've actually come out of a recession yet, and there are some parts of the world that are saying, what recession? And that discrepancy has allowed for even growing but disproportionate growth of demand for energy. Where is this stuff? Overwhelmingly, close to 60% of the known proven oil reserves come from a part of the world called the Middle East. And 40% of all the commercially traded oil in the world goes through 3 key areas. One is the Straits of Hormuz, another is the Bab el-Mandeb, and a third is the Suez Canal. So if we were only looking at this particular commodity and this particular region, the command for our attention is clear and it is critical.